Hi, I'm Roy Collin, the host of the podcast. You can find everything about me by scanning the QR code there or going to roycollin.com. And you'll find my 6 podcasts, the Podfather, helping people become podcasters, the Awakening, Exposing Fraud and Corruption but with Solutions, the Crypto, All Things Blockchain Technology, Meditation Podcast, Speaking Podcast, and the Learn Polish Podcast. You can also help the show by actually making a donation, visiting the store, or helping my sponsors. I hope you enjoyed this week's show.
So today we will have a very engaging conversation. Let's see, am I live? Yeah, it is live. How is that we will tackle one of the most controversial and pressing topics in modern healthcare, and that's the big pharma's grip on our lives through advertising and propaganda. And this is really close and dear to our hearts in this platform, because when we came together as a collective podcasting is when there was this crazy scamdemic. Okay, so we all know that. So, and as holistic nurse, again, this topic is so dear and near to my heart. So, and John Richardson, who is a first-time guest in our platform, will lead us to this conversation, and he's the visionary behind the Pharmageddon, the plan to end big pharma advertising and propaganda. So John is here to pull back curtain on how pharmaceutical companies influence not just our healthcare decisions, but really the very narrative around wellness, disease, and trust in the medicine. So we'll truly deep dive into the origins of this path that he's taking, and plus the other people around him. And the first time I heard about this topic is when I saw the post of Robert Kennedy Jr., and I was truly excited, and I can't wait for every little step and successes that they accomplish. So we will examine the direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical ads and explore how bold solutions to reclaim healthcare transparency and integrity. So if you really wondered how much of your health decisions are shaded or shaped by this billion-dollar, who knows, maybe trillion, and campaigns, or what a world without pharma propaganda. So don't look around, stay with us, and make sure if this episode resonates to you and to other family members, feel free to share and get involved aware of what John Richardson Jr. will be doing. So maybe from the for the start, since it is your first time with us, John, how about you introduce yourself? I said, who is this John Richardson Jr. and what is this that he's doing or getting engaged in?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I think one of my favorite things is when I come on a podcast for the first time and tell the story of my hero. The reason why I've been doing this pretty much my whole life is my father was Dr. John Richardson, and he was educated at the University of Rochester Medical School. He went through a big pharma education. So when he came out, he knew how to prescribe drugs and cut things off of people and bill them. That's basically what the medical system teaches you. And the only answers that we're allowed to have legally as a medical doctor in America is pharmaceutical, big pharma, big medicine answers. So anytime you talk about natural answers, you're running, you're running against the AMA and big medicine. So my father, to make a long story short, my father, by an early 1970s, started learning about this subject called Laetrile, amygdalin, vitamin B17, the active compound found in stone fruit seeds, especially the apricot seed, the peach seed, the apple seed. So he was studying about it because he learned. He said he had about a week's worth of education when he went to medical school for 10 years, the residency and everything. He had a week worth of nutritional education, a week in that 10 years. And so he knew nothing about nutrition when it was coming to people. So he started seeing his patients. He was an ear, nose, and throat specialist. He started seeing his patients get cancer. He would refer them out to chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, which are the only approved treatments to this day. And he would never see his patients come back. They'd never come back to his practice. So he was losing his patients. And so he started looking for other answers. And he found Laetrile through Dr. Ernst Krebs Sr., who had discovered it in the 1920s, and his son, Ernst Krebs Jr., who was a PhD professor in San Francisco. And when our cat, Spooky, came down with cancer, Dad drove over to San Francisco with my oldest brother. He recounted that story to me recently, and got some Laetrile and gave it to our cat. And the cat responded tremendously. And then he just so happened that his favorite nurse, Charlotte Anderson, had a sister, Mildred, who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. She had cancer throughout her arm, and they wanted to remove her arm at Kaiser Hospital in San Francisco, California. And she begged my father she heard the story about Spooky and begged my father to use Laetrile on her, and had tremendous success. Wiped out her cancer. And again, I know we can be censored on platforms, so I'll try to say wiped out her big C, and the audience will know what I mean. Hopefully that didn't get us censored. This is a true story, back in the early 1971, 72 area. And so she went back to Kaiser Hospital. Months later, they said, "You are absolutely big C free, and we can't find it anywhere, but we still think we should remove your arm." And Mildred said, why should you remove my arm? And they said, well, because it always comes back. Every time we ever see it go away, get rid of it, we don't know what you did, but it always comes back. And so she politely declined. And years later, my dad saw her at a wedding, and she ran up to my father, holding out both of her arms, him holding both of her hands. And they both realized that they had changed each other's lives. My dad made it so she didn't have to have her arm removed, but she made it so that he opened his eyes to this, because after that, he started actively treating his patients, and he treated over 6,000 patients from 1972 to 1977 with tremendous results, all kinds of case histories. But his reward for this was that his practice was raided in the summer of 1972 by machine gun toting FDA agents and local police officers, as well as the news media was there. The news media was filming it. It was strange that this raid was filmed on the news. But that started years of lawfare and warfare against my father. His practice was raided 8 times. He was arrested twice. He was sued 4 times by the government, all unsuccessfully. Eventually won all those. And then eventually they took away his license in 1977. But in the meantime, he got his good friend G. Edward Griffin to write the book, World Without Cancer. Let's see if I can pull it up here. This is the book written by G. Edward Griffin in December of 1974, 50 years ago. And this book has been republished about 24 times, updated. And Ed Griffin, who's 93 now, says he doesn't know anybody that regularly eats apricot seeds that's ever died of cancer. The first part of the book is all about the science, why B17 Laetrile work in the prevention and treatment of the C word. And the second half is the reason why we've never found out about it. It's been hidden from us, much like the answers to the thing that we put in our arm were hidden from us. Many people know about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, vitamin D, all these wonderful things that helped us with the C19 thing were hidden from us because they wanted us to take a thing in our arm. So they lied to us about these things that worked. And I know doctors that have 100% success rate with treating COVID-19 patients using natural or already approved things that are out there. So the same was true about cancer, about the C word. I apologize. So my dad, so Ed Griffin came out with a book, and he was my good friends with my dad and dedicated that book to my father. But in 1977, my father came out with his own book called Laetrile Case Histories, the Richardson C-word experience. And sorry to go off screen. And he documented 62 cases that had gone to a clinic beforehand, were told they had the C word, went through his protocol, and then went back to the clinic and were shown to be C-free. Now, why was that important that they had to do all those 3 steps? Because they were saying that they were telling my dad, no, these people that you're treating are just spontaneous. They're spontaneously getting well, or it's the after effects of the chemo and radiation they got, or they never really did have the C word. So there was many, many more miraculous cases my dad treated. I have thousands of letters from patients that he treated, but the only ones that made it to the book were the ones that were documented completely. So that's the initiation story to this. And I got to see the absolute demonization of my father and other doctors, and demonization of the story by big news, by big pharma, by big medicine. And so that's carried all the way forward to today. But I'm bringing this story up because basically by 1988, the powers that be had demonized Laetrile, demonized the doctors that did it. New York Times published over 158 articles in 1977 when my dad came out with his book. When Sloan Kettering Institute came out with a study that proved that it worked to stop metastases of cancer. And when Loyola University 30-year professor Dr. Harold Manner announced to the world that we should have the end of mastectomies with Laetrile, vitamin A, and enzymes, all 3 of these studies were squashed. And 3 of the 4 doctors, including Dr. Beard, who was the head of the National Institute of Health for 30 years, a big proponent of Laetrile, all 3 of these doctors died at the end of 1988, including my father. And at that point, Laetrile was either considered a quackery, ineffective, or poisonous, or all 3. But it's never died. It's continued. And I've spent the last 30 years of my life putting this out there. So that's the origin story. What I tell the first time. There's a whole lot more to it, but that's what I tell so people understand where I'm coming from, that I didn't just pop up yesterday and become anti, big pharma, or because my dad was an MD. He was a university, and I have many, many MD friends that all have woken up through this pandemic, this COVID-19 thing, because they've seen in a period of 4 years what it's taken 50 years to do to cancer patients. How many women have died of breast cancer needlessly because this has been covered up and lied about? No one would ever believe that before this COVID thing. Now people believe that they'll cover up natural answers or effective answers that are cheap just for profit and for population control.
Well, thank you, John. Amazing, amazing. And it's really, I'm glad you brought out all the sad facts. And at the same time, you brought out also all the good news. And that's what I always tell friends. It's never too late to change the course of your health. Never. All you have to do really is open up your perception and willingness to learn other things, to know other things. And there it is. And I think this is a perfect time. Many people are eager now to get the grip fully on themselves. Although I said that the pharma has grip on our health, not really. So some of us, especially in this platform, we know that we didn't let them get a grip on our health. So you too, listening to us and following us, could do the same, okay? And welcome, Kevin, and welcome, Drago, for being with us. So now we truly become international with our platform, and that's why, because it is an international concerns. So, and
Really?
let's bless your father, and thank you also for carrying on what your father. So one pattern I will tell some people is that what I used to do is anything from the main news, from the big pharma that they demonize, that's where I have to stop and think, maybe there's something good in this, So always think of that. And then if someone dies or someone, they really also, they do everything to destroy a medical professions or practitioners' reputation. Always also think what could be happening or what is the exciting contribution of this individual. So thank your father and thank you.
Thank you so much.
No,
Oh.
No, it's okay. And so I was thinking also, I just want to bring it to the audience attention, and then I'll let you carry on, and all the rest of my team will just carry on with the conversation. is that in the whole world, there are only two countries that fully advertises, and that's America and New Zealand. Although others also advertise to the health professionals, which sometimes could also become questionable. Because I work in ICU for 20 years, and pharma representatives are always there for, we like the treats, but for me, who is aware of things, I can only take the treats, but I don't take everything that say that's true. So why is it that our country and New Zealand really allowed this to happen?
Well, it comes down to profit. It comes down to making money. And the reason why it happens in the United States, I'm not specifically educated about the New Zealand politics, but the reason why it happens in the United States is because the FDA has become a captured agency. It's basically captured by Big Pharma. So the entire existence of the Food and Drug Administration is to promote and license and approve pharmaceutical drugs. They don't do, since the 1950s, they have not approved a single natural answer to anything. And they don't have any pharmaceutical that's ever been approved that's been proven to cure anything. It's a fallacy that people think pharmaceuticals are just mostly the effective things are pain relief, and all they do is cover up the pain without actually getting to the root of the problem. In the United States, we don't fix the root of the problem. We fix the symptoms. Most huge buildings, medical establishments are all about what kind of pain are you in? How can we fix your pain? What can we do to get rid of your pain? Without ever thinking about what the root cause of the problem is. We at Operation World Without Cancer and RNC Store, we believe that God gave us every natural answer to chronic disease, to metabolic disease, meaning that everything that we're seeing, 95% of the diseases we're seeing in the United States are all related to diet, exercise, and lifestyle choices. And that's too easy and it's hard for people to believe because we've been brainwashed by these advertisements from Big Pharma that you always have an answer to erectile dysfunction or tiredness or low blood pressure, that Big Pharma has a better answer than God. And whatever your religious beliefs are, we believe that nature has the answer to all of these things. And I am a living testimony. All of my kids are. I have 11 children. Not one of them has ever been vaccinated because I don't believe that Big Pharma has a better answer to my kids' immune system than God does or nature does, whatever your belief system is. And that if they eat healthy and don't eat the horrible foods that we have in the world, mostly in the United States, again, we wonder why they allow pharmaceutical advertising. They also allow the worst chemicals in the world to be in our food in America because, as RFK states, sick children are the highest profitability in the United States. It's the most effective investment to make a sick child for the rest of their life. They are a profit machine for all the diseases they're going to have the rest of their life that keeps Big Pharma and these big medical buildings built. So again, I have many doctor friends that are, I don't say they're bad people, but they only have been educated on the pharmaceutical answers. So I hope I answered your question of why they do it. It's simply, they give us the problem, they create the problem, they give us the solution, and they soak money out of it going back and forth. And the people going back and forth from the three-letter agencies, from the FDA to Big Pharma to Pfizer, who Pfizer spends billions of dollars on advertising. They go back and forth between the FDA, and it's just about how much profit they can make in between on making the problem, coming up with a solution, and keeping the person sick. We don't give doctors bonuses for making their patients go home well. We only pay them for keeping their patients medicated and on the next drug and on the next surgery and on the next test. That's our current system, and it's broken, and it has to be replaced.
I couldn't agree more, John. And for you to have 11 children, just a proof of optimum health. I say that, okay? You've been busy. You had all that energy, and God bless you for doing that. So follow, guys. Before I pass it on to Roy, just check out the nonprofit organization Operation World Without Cancer. Because nowadays, especially after all those shocks that you got or your family got, there's all those turbo cancer here and there, and you don't, But again, there's a solution, okay? There's a solution. So thank you, Roy.
Thanks, Grace.
And I'd love to hear questions. I just wanted to show you, there's equivalent of 3 apricot seeds that I'm going to eat right now while you ask me a question. And if you Google it, Google will say you'll die of cyanide poisoning if you eat the seeds. I eat 40 a day on average, but it's a lie that you've been told. And I'd love to hear questions about that if anybody's looked at it.
Actually, I wrote that down when you mentioned apples, because that's what I was told. I was told, don't eat the seeds because they've got cyanide in them. So as you're chewing and enjoying, like listening to your father that was attacked, I mean, I've seen that a lot. I read 100 books a year, and Royal Raymond Rife in the 30s, same thing. He was curing people and attacked, and they destroyed his machines and everything. And that seems to be the norm. There's a load of different things. And what I find is totally insane, especially in America. I'm not sure what it's like in Europe because I haven't heard. But the people through medical costs that have bankruptcy. So the bankruptcies in America is now 40%, but it went up to 62% at one stage. Like, that's crazy. And this is stuff that they're charging, like sometimes an IV bag, 800 quid, but like with chemo and all these different things, hundreds of thousands. And the fact that you can go bankrupt because of medical costs is insane, because it's bad enough having a loved one that's sick, but then to lose everything. And when there's alternatives and they just attack you. So I'm just curious, when you know that's going on, how frustrating is that for you?
Well, it's extremely frustrating, and it's one of our platforms. We've come up with 7 platforms for the transition team because this really is happening. I want your audience to know it really is happening. We have always said we hope it's happening. I know from the inside that the transition team, the Make America Healthy Again, and we like to say make the world healthy again, because so goes America, so goes the rest of the world. So one of our platforms is exactly that natural, God-given solutions for a disease should be covered exactly the same as these expensive pharmaceutical answers to the same disease. So when you go to your doctor, you could have a choice of going the natural route with its pros and cons, or go the orthodox route. This one might cost $500,000. This one might cost $25,000. They should both be covered. You shouldn't have to choose to come out of pocket for the natural treatments that you could try first, or maybe alongside with the orthodox. Or there's many doctors doing integrative. They're using some chemotherapy with change of diet and lifestyles. Both should be covered equally, because exactly what you said, the entire system is built. You work your whole life, you have insurance, you put away a savings, and then you get this disease at the end of your life that literally takes your life while it's taking your entire wealth. So you die penniless and sick and dead based on the treatments that are used on you, instead of many people don't even have the option to choose the natural answers. And we're fighting and pushing forward that the statistics and data that the government has hidden, covered up, be released to the world, be released to the United States for all these God-given natural answers. I can start going and naming many of them: iodine and vitamin D, and all these different vitamin C. All these different things have been proven through studies to be effective in having people have a healthy, long life. It should be the data from that should be just as easy to get as the data from the multi-million-dollar studies that proved that these things they jabbed in our arms were poisonous, but they didn't release it. They wanted to keep it hidden for 75 years. The system you just talked about that bankrupts people is exactly the system that's designed. We're just a way to make some money during our lifetime. So at the end, they take our money and take our life, and that's the end of the story, and move to the next. move to the next patient that's put into the system at 12 years old, because they have, in the state of California that I moved out of with my 11 children all going to public school, they require 72 vaccines before a child is 5 years old and goes into kindergarten. My daughter just had my first grandson, and that's what he looks forward to under current laws in California before he starts kindergarten. And I'm telling all of you, over my dead body. That's why I'm willing to go out there and tell the truth, is I'm not going to allow that to happen to my grandson, to your grandsons, to anybody's sons or daughters anymore, because the data is going to come out on January 21st or soon thereafter.
And with the FDA, because what's frustrating to me and obviously millions of people is they make it look like this is protecting people. But one, it's funded, I don't know what percentage, by Big Pharma. Two, a lot of the people that are working in the FDA end up working for Big Pharma. And three, they doctor all the results. So if there's 1,000 test cases, they remove the 97 bad ones and make it look like it's good, which it's like, the worst thing is not everybody realizes that. And they actually just trust the doctor that's prescribing stuff thinking, oh, this is FDA approved, or even the food. And it's actually further from the truth. It's actually, to me, they're like the mafia.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the FDA owns patents to pharmaceutical drugs, including these injections. That is a conflict of interest. They should not profit from the drugs they approve, but that's the current system. The current system is a revolving door, and RFK Jr. and his transition team are going to stop that. That's another one of the things that they're going to stop immediately. That if you've worked for the FDA, you can't just go over to Big Pharma and get a job, and vice versa. You know, they won't be able to control that as much as the other way. If you've been the CEO of Pfizer or Moderna, you don't go get a job approving drugs, the year after you quit, or you can take a golden parachute and make millions of dollars of stock options. It's been well documented that Anthony Fauci of our government, who worked for the government for 20 years, holds interest in many of the patents on drugs, including remdesivir, which was proven to destroy people's organs and kill people within 7 days in the studies prior to being approved to treat people for COVID. This is criminal. It's proven, and they're not going to get away with it. So that's the good news. The bad news is a lot of people have had to die, and people are continuing to die of cancer, when I'm telling you, we have proof beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's a deficiency disease. That's the good news. It's a deficiency disease that these jabs or these things outside that are poisonous cause our immune system to be lowered. But if we have the proper nutrition, it's been well proven that we can make cancer go the way of scurvy, which used to kill millions of people before they discovered vitamin C deficiency killed people with scurvy. The same thing is with the C word, the big C. And once we discover that and all of us open up to it, they will not be able to take that information away from us. And so millions, literally millions of people are now regularly eating apricot seeds or foods containing amygdalin that have been wiped out of our diet over the last century, as cancer rates have soared.
And like originally, Watson was meant to kind of be for the healthcare. And my hope is with AI that you can go in and ask, hey, I've got the big C, what's the best way? Instead of getting you on chemo and different things like that, that it starts guiding you in your direction and giving you solutions for that and every other ailment as well. Can you see that happening?
Well, let me answer that. That's a great question. I love that. The problem with AI currently is it only gives you an answer based on what's been fed to it. We have in the last year uncovered 3 containers full of studies, books, case histories, lawsuits, filings with the government that were all in what we call the vault. They were in the vaults that we have been discovering things such as a book like this that I had never seen before, that was published by Dr. Harold Manner with Loyola University, called The Death of the C Word. It's all the story about B17. I had never seen it. I've been doing this 30 years, but this information has been deleted off of the internet. The only place it exists is in written form, and we're scanning and getting it in. And now we got to get this fed to the AI systems that are out there. We're actively trying to do that, and that's one of the missions we want to do through Operation World Without the C Word, is to get this information that's been censored into the AI platforms. Because currently, if you ask an AI platform what are the approved treatments for the C word, they're going to tell you what is already told to us in the media. So these hidden secrets that have been hidden for the last 50 years and even hidden to, why isn't this front page news? Why isn't this front page news that someone like the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, actually had stage 4 C word in 1985, and he was treated by a Dr. Hans Nieper from West Germany. He was treated for 60 days with Laetrile and metabolic therapy and wiped out his C word so that he lived another 19 years. We found that information in the vault, and we've interviewed staff members of Ronald Reagan's that have backed us up on it and knew that's what happened, but they've covered it up. And no one on this panel and most of the people I tell this to have ever heard that before. It's been
I've never
history.
heard it.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine, or they call it, there's different things. We found newspaper articles that literally when we Google it, it has words taken out of the newspaper articles. We had the literal ones cut out of the newspaper from the 1970s, in the 1980s, and the 1990s from our vault. I can go on and on. So great question, but we have to make sure that the AI is fed with the truth. And RFK Jr. has told me, amongst a group of people, that he's going to make sure that the hidden studies that the government has are going to be released. And then we can, as a public, we can judge for ourselves what we believe or not. Are we going to believe Big Pharma, whose only reason for telling us things is for profit? Or are we going to believe brave doctors who put their careers on the line, were fired from their universities for telling the truth? Are we going to believe these doctors whose information was hidden, or they were let's call it unalived for telling the truth? What are we going to believe? There's the motivations come from? Many people said my dad, he was a quack and he used this, therapies. He could have made way more money treating his patients with chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. Could have retired a very wealthy man. As it was, the government, the 3-letter agencies attacked him from every angle, including the Internal Revenue Service, so that he was worth less when he passed than he was when he was born.
And just finally, before I pass you on, when I was preparing a book before, and I didn't release it because it was warned not to, and I was looking at charities, and there's a lot of C charities, and sometimes the CEOs are on massive salaries, but sometimes it's like 1% actually goes to the charity. They never seem to cure anything. And is there, with the discussions you're having, is there any talks of shutting that down? Because there's people giving their hard-earned money thinking they're helping, but the reality is they're just lining the pockets of the guy who's driving the Ferrari.
Yeah, well, I have a 2-part answer to that. One is, please do the book, because this is the time we have to be brave. This is the time the public's ready to hear our information. This is the time I'm saying things that probably would have got me put in jail 5 years ago. But there's people that are braver than me that are saying equal things, like RFK Jr.'s basically giving up his family. So I'm imploring you to do the book. I have people reaching out to me to put chapters in the book about my subject, which is Laetrile B17, but there's so many more subjects. The second answer is, it's going to become self-evident. All of these charities have raised $2 trillion in the last 10 years are not interested. You can just look, and they're not interested in finding a cure, because if they find a cure, they go out of business. They're not finding a cure. So it's going to be self-evident from the public when they're seeing a study. For example, we have the data that shows a group of 10,000 kids that have been fully vaccinated versus the health levels of 10,000 kids that have never been vaccinated. The government has this data. they've kept it secret. And I will tell you, do you think as a panel that if the data showed that the 10,000 kids who were fully vaccinated were far more healthy, lived greater lives, had no obesity, no diabetes, and the kids that were unvaccinated were sick and dying, you know, like dying constantly and were always sick in the hospital, do you think they wouldn't have released that study at this point? I can tell you they have the data and they haven't released it. So the same thing about these charities that have been trying to raise funds for investing in pharmaceutical drugs. We're going to have the same data that has the pharmaceutical way, chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, increase people's lives, their quality of lives, and their length of life over the subset of the people that have changed their diet, breathing clean air, drinking clean water, being spiritual, exercising, taking in vegetables instead of animal proteins, all the things that are called for in my dad's protocol. That's just one example. Which are people going to choose when they see the statistics and they go to these cancer organizations that have been raising money that have never, ever done any studies about the natural, God-given answers to disease?
Yeah, I'm just a book that I read in the 1950s, The Poison Needle. They're talking about eczema, asthma, and all these different things. They have proven that they all came about by the poison dart. So I'll pass you on to Hartmut. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you, John, for being here. This is it's amazing because I want to talk much more about the effect of B17 and about what you how you can treat people. First of all, I suppose you know the Gerson therapy. The Gerson therapy was established by a German doctor who had to escape from Germany to USA, and then also from USA to Mexico, because he made a very specific treatment. On the one hand, he gave the people very fresh vitamins and vegetable fruit drinks, and on the other hand, he made coffee infusions. And the interesting thing is, he was of the opinion that C is a question of detoxification of cells. And can you confirm this, that you have also this experience that we talk here about more about the detoxification of the cells, which at the end will reduce their mitochondria to work with maybe 20-50% of its energy. And is it possible to increase, let's say it this way, is it possible to increase the health of these affected cells again? Or is it possible that the cells will not affect other cells, healthy cells? How does it work?
Okay, so let me start off by saying it's long been known, the two most effective, two most demonized natural treatments for the C word you've mentioned today. Gerson therapy is like hand in hand, like my father's therapy, except Gerson didn't call out vitamin B17 as a name, but all the plants that he recommended that that you're eating, all the diet plan was equal to my father's. He just didn't call it out by eat these plants because they're full of amygdalin. But if you look at the things that Gerson recommended, they're all full of amygdalin. Now I can compare that to wild animals. Wild animals in nature eat about 30% of the things they eat are full of amygdalin. And therefore, wild animals never get the C word. As soon as they're put into a zoo or they're brought home to your family and they're their dog and the cat and they go on a processed diet and all of the amygdalin containing foods they eat go away, they get the C word. So Gerson said, he believed that it was a toxification of our cells, and my dad believed it was the lack of the nutrient amygdalin. But their plans, their answers were very closely related. Many people to this day supplement with amygdalin in addition to the Gerson therapy and just follow it. But we've all heard stories of people that just got off animal proteins and just switched to drinking juices and vegetable juices and juicing, and wiped out their C word, because the seeds of the juices that they're juicing have a lot of amygdalin in it, but many of the vegetables, spinach and barley and sorghum molasses and all these things, contain high concentrations of amygdalin. So the Gerson therapy does not go opposite of what my father said and many doctors after him. It's hand in hand. And I believe that the toxification is the fact that we're getting toxics in our diet, or in sprayed on us, or in the food that we eat, lowers our immune system. I know it seems like drawing a line, but if our immune system is destroyed, we need more supplementation, eating better foods to bring our immune system back. There's so many cases of this. So whether you say detoxifying is the most important thing and then bring your immune system up with proper supplementation, proper diet, or you talk about bringing your proper diet up first and then make sure you're detoxified, both go hand in hand. So I'm a huge believer in the Gerson therapy, along with the metabolic therapy, and combining them. And my dad, through his studies, and many doctors, could get 80 to 90% of his patients to respond, but he still had that small percentage that he couldn't get to respond. And so he was constantly figuring out, oh, you need more zinc in your diet. Oh, we need more vitamin D. Oh, we need more vitamin C. So through history, we've seen that bringing all of these things up to a level that makes our immune system good allows us to fight off all disease. So I hope I answered your question. I don't think it's one or the other. Just like I'm going to mention this, many people say parasites are what cause the C word. I agree and I disagree. Here's why I disagree. If a person has the right diet and has plenty of amygdalin in their diet and these other things I'm talking about, they never get attacked by the parasites. But once the immune system is lowered, the parasites attack that we all have. The parasites are everywhere. The parasites attack, and now you have to kill the parasites in addition to getting rid of the toxicities, in addition to bringing up our nutritional levels. As an example, 40 years ago, junk food we ate didn't have the poisons that the same junk food today has. So that gives you an example. So not only is RFK Jr. saying we got to fix the pharmaceuticals, we got to fix the insurance, we got to fix the medical educations, we got to get the toxins out of our food, because my dad didn't have to deal with the level of toxins that's in food every day that our kids eat. 80% of processed foods, we didn't have to deal with those then. I know it seems daunting, but here I am surviving at 60 I'm not on a single pharmaceutical medication, and my 11 kids, all going to public school and living in the world, don't go to the doctors. Our kids do not get sick, and they eat some junk food, but they mostly eat a natural, organic, as close to natural as possible. But we don't even have a garden. Anybody that has a garden has a huge advantage over our family, because they don't have to supplement as much. If you grow food in your own garden, according to the Gerson therapy, eating as many vegetables and things as possible, you don't have the issues that we have in modern, shopping at the modern grocery stores with all the garbage that's there.
And this is the next target or next problem what we are going to face. For example, according to Dr. Heiko Schöding, a German doctor for medicine, he said that the next attack on the human race will be the attack on the human microbiome, and this will be manipulated by the agriculture industry, by what we eat, and this attack will be very dangerous for us.
It's already happening. Sad to say, it's already happening. So what you can do, or your audience can do, is avoid processed foods, because the glyphosate is in all of the processed food that we do, and all the GMO corn and the GMO products we have, and it's all of our fast food, all of our processed food. And people don't realize that you would think growing a carrot would be cheaper than processing a carrot so much that you have 20 ingredients on your carrot juice. They're all, chemicals and things like that. You would think the more you process something, the more expensive it got. But the current food system is subsidized in such a way that the more processed the food is, the cheaper it is. So a lot of poor people buy the cheaper processed food that's full of the glyphosates and other chemicals you're talking about, that they're destroying our microbiomes. So it's a couple-pronged approach. As much as possible, we need to eat food that just says, carrots or broccoli on the label, not broccoli and 27 chemicals that help it have shelf life. Shelf life means you're destroying your microbiome. So yes, you're absolutely right that that's a plan, but we can thwart that plan by eating as natural as we possibly can in every instance that we can. It's just a choice. And a lot of times the problem in America, not so much in Europe and Canada and other places, but they also put addicting chemicals, proven to be addicting chemicals in our processed food. So we choose that processed food, even though it's bad for us and poisonous, over the more natural answer because it doesn't have the addicting chemicals in it.
And as you mentioned glyphosate, I listened last time, or I think it was today, to Dr. Klinghardt, and he said something very interesting. The Austrian Dr. Wilhelm Reich, he predicted for the end of the 20th century a war of the industry complex for harvesting our souls. And they try to do it in order to reduce or disrupt the function of the pineal gland. And there are four, let's say, four things which reduce the function of the pineal gland. And this is aluminum, fluoride, glyphosate, and electromagnetic fields. And the question is, has B17 an effect on this?
Unfortunately, it doesn't. But everything you just said, my dad taught me since I was a child. I knew as a child that fluoride was poisonous. And my dad said, never drink tap water. I never, to this day at 60, drink tap water. I'd rather drink bottled water in a plastic bottle, even though that's not great for me. I would choose that over drinking tap water because of the fluoride. RFK Jr. in America is going to outlaw fluoride in our drinking water on day one. I've known that since I was literally a toddler. Same thing with 5G. We've seen studies that electromagnetic radiation affects the pineal gland. I'm not an expert on the pineal gland, but I do know that iodine, naturally occurring iodine, has shown great effects on cleaning that out and decalcifying the pineal gland. B17 does not. It's not one of the things that affects. But I don't ever claim that it's an end all cure all. I just say it's one of the most demonized vitamins and supplements because it creates an industry, a cancer C-word industry that's so very profitable. There's not many other diseases that are able to soak someone's bank account as much as the horrifying disease of C-word, of big C. But if it was a little simple, Ed Griffin wrote in his book, if we found that this little simple lowly apricot seed could wipe out a $2 trillion industry, there'd be a lot of angry people that wouldn't want you to know that. And there's a lot of brainwashing that's going on for 50 years to tell us that's not possible. This John Richardson must be crazy. He must not have any proof of what he's saying. And they've taken doctors out for that. So the answer to your question is no, we don't have any studies that say that B17 is good for the pineal gland. However, we have many studies that say things like it's almost a CURE for sickle cell anemia. They've done looks at sickle cell anemia in Black people, and then given them amygdalin, and then look at and do a electron microscope on it afterwards, and the cells are round and healthy and doing great. So that's been covered up. A famous dentist in the 1970s and 80s, a world famous dentist, German dentist, did a study that said that cavities are a deficiency of vitamin B17. Again, why don't we know about that? Because cavities are very profitable for certain industries. And I'm not saying all dentists are bad, but drilling and capping and putting metal in our mouth and all that's very profitable. So a lot of times you have to look at why do we know about these natural answers and why we don't. But I wanted to bring up Dr. Hans Nieper, a German specialist who was the one that treated Ronald Reagan. And he was a huge proponent of Laetrile. And this book would be very interesting for you to have. It's out of print, but we're trying to get it back in print. But he had breakthroughs, natural breakthroughs in cardiovascular disease, multiple sclerosis, and cancer, and all using natural, God-given answers. And he was a famous German doctor, but I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Hans Nieper before I'm mentioning it today. Has anybody ever heard of Dr. Hans Nieper? Why not? Why not? Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, the situation is also with respect to the thing what we got in our bodies, or many people got in the bodies, is that the spike protein also went through the blood-brain barrier, and it has an effect on the hippocampus, which makes a neuroinflammation, and it reduces it stops the production of the memory of the cells which are responsible for memory. And there we also have to look whether we can find any nutritions or any ways in order to reduce this or to stop this.
Yeah, I have more great news. We do have the answer to it, and if I say it, we could probably go off at a whole different podcast about this subject. But the demonization of nightshade vegetables and a compound that we all know has been demonized for years, including so demonized that it took me a year of hearing this and studying it to believe in it. But nicotine. Has anybody heard about the effects of nicotine from Dr. Brian Ardis? Okay, well, good. So he's a good friend of mine. We speak regularly together. His book, he just came out with his book that I would recommend to anybody, and I usually have a copy of it. He printed 10,000 copies of it, and Amazon said they'd never seen a record. Last I saw him, I actually text messaged him just a couple of days ago to see how many books he sold, but last time I saw him, it was 174,000 books within 2 months on Amazon. And I got an autographed copy from him. So I'm giving the good news to your audience. Brian is a far bigger expert on COVID-19 and the benefits of nicotine, to where you can rest easy knowing I'm wearing a nicotine patch, whereas I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. I always believed it was an addictive, horrible chemical. And I found out that I was lied to. And I've been in this business for 40 years. And I was lied to completely about the natural, God-given substance found in nightshade vegetables called nicotine. So your audience, rather than us going off on a subject that I'm not an expert at, I'd refer you to my good friend, Dr. Brian Ardis, and his book about COVID-19. He's an amazing man. He's a great researcher. And that's the good news for your audience that I know is a fact, because I'm doing it myself. And that so many other people are getting, people that had long COVID. I never got anything to do with COVID, probably because I was eating so many apricot seeds that it never affected my lungs. But so many people with long COVID symptoms have turned to the nicotine patch and had alarming and amazing and wonderful immediate results.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure, and pass it to Kevin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think, John, you and I have met before, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. We've had several conversations. Yeah.
We have totally met before. I've sat with you, and
Yes.
Christina Edelkamp is now my wife.
Oh, wait. Oh, wow. That's okay.
We met about the time I met you, and we're now happily married, and with 11 children, all unvaccinated, because Chris had 5. And I had my 6 of my own. So anyway, yes, Kevin, we've definitely met.
Okay. Congratulations, though, and tell her congratulations also. And well, thank you for the fine work that you're doing. And thank you again. Your father has blessed us all with the right information at the right time. And I think there's a seismic shift happening in the country from sick care to well care. I think this industry that we call Big Pharma is in trouble. But I want to give pause because I hear a lot of people talking about what the federal government is going to be doing quickly. And, and I've been in the federal government, I've been at the state level, the local level. It doesn't really move like that. I think one of the things that we have to get back hyper focused on is going back to the local level and pushing policies at the local level with these local legislators that will bring balance to what the federal government is going to be doing in the future. And I also think that based on all the work that you've done and all the work that our Dr. Artis and so many lovely doctors have done that I know personally, I think we need to prioritize what we want to happen in the first quarter of this administration at the federal level. And that is to change how they process our food in this country. That is that number one thing. I think what CVID did was awaken this country to how sick we are, how horribly sick we are, but how horribly sick our children are and the damage that has been done to our children. I think you said something that was very important, making the world healthy. And see, once we get aligned with the world, what's happening in Africa right now and what Gates has done in Africa and the pharmaceutical industry has done in Africa is horrible. It's genocide at a level that we can't even fathom of what that industry has done. And I think that we really are going to have to get serious. The transition team that's out there talking about making America healthy again, we really have to prioritize what we really want to get done first. It's going to be very, very difficult to really change the FDA, but we can shine a light on the FDA like we have been doing from the outside will make them shift because public opinion says we're done with the way you do business. The same thing with the CDC, because we're going to still have a lot of obstacles in front of us. But if we prioritize what we want to accomplish in the first 100 days, that's a win-win. But I think we're going to have to get back to the local level again and start to do another re-education program of all the things that you're saying, because we have been sick for so long. I don't even think we trust being healthy. It's really interesting when I talk to my friends that are dying at 60, people that I know that are dying at 60, dying at 59, dying at 40, and they're saying, oh, they're dying because their cancer came back. I mean, I'm like, that's bull crap. We got a lot more work to do. I was watching an interview that Trump was doing with the, I think it was ABC or CBS, and they asked him a very direct question after everything we've learned about all of this. Well, you know what doctors are saying. The doctors are saying that you are wrong. I'm like, no, real doctors aren't saying that. Doctors that work for Big Pharma are saying the opposite, but doctors that are talking about well care and moving us out of sick care and making and healing this country are telling the people the truth. So I think the work that you're doing and the work that this panel is doing and my friend Grace has been doing about educating the nation and educating the world is critically important. If we miss that point, we won't win the fight. If we don't go back to educating, if we don't go back at the state level, if we don't go back at the local level, we will not win the fight, because every 4 years or every 8 years, a new president will come in, and Big Pharma knows this. They understand this game, and they will lobby us out of existence. So it's not about, the transition team making these suggestions, but for me, I'm going to be having this conversation for the next 6 months about how do we prioritize our fight. Because we're spending a lot of money and a lot of organizations saying they're going to do this and they're going to do that and they're going to do this. Well, they've never been in government at that level before. It doesn't work that way. And I've been there for a long time. And I know that we're going to have to really put pressure from the outside at the local level to get those changes. So I'm really encouraged by these conversations. And thank you, because in our community, and not just the Black community, but every community, we've been bamboozled. And when you hear that C word, everybody just
In the Black community, though. So I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm not trying to interrupt you because
actually.
I just grew up. My mom passed away when I was 2.5 years old, and a beautiful, wonderful Louisiana Black woman raised me. So I'm kind of a brother from another mother, if you know what I'm saying. I was almost so.
Yeah, but I think you told me this story before too, by the way.
My dad was a champion about B17 and its effect on sickle cell anemia. He believed we can wipe out sickle cell anemia, and that's a disease that primarily affects our Black brothers and sisters. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
no. I've seen chronic illness for real. I've seen it for real every day. Every time I'm in my neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey, other neighborhoods, I see chronic illness. and the horror of it every day. And it's about education. Now, I got to tell all of you on the panel, there's been a wake up. Now, I got to tell you, people are really talking about how to get healthy again. People are addressing the obesity issue. People are paying attention to what we've all been saying for the last 4 years. It's really caught fire. But if we don't prioritize this, we only have 24 months politically. I always tell people, when a president gets in, Trump will never be here beyond these 4 years. So we have to get really realistic and take our heads out of the clouds and really start to figure out what are the first 12 steps we need to take to create that seismic shift in the culture of health in this country. And if we could do that, we win the battle long term. And I don't want to take up our time, but I'm just glad I joined. I've been out of pocket for a couple of weeks, and I'm babysitting my brand new grandchild. She's 2 years old. So I had to come outside because she was not letting me move around the house. So I was just enjoying this. And you know what, John, I got to tell you, those books that you just acknowledge, if you can put them in the feed, that would be great, because I think I want to share those books, because I have those issues. I have friends, unfortunately, that have been very close to me, very early in their lives, have died in the last 4 years. And John, you have to hear the excuses that people make up for their death. I'm like, guys, that's unnatural. Turbos are unnatural. These chronic it's just unnatural. And I think we need to really start pushing back. And, one of the things we should do together, John, all of us, is put a book together talking about the 10 steps to a better, healthy life, something simple, and I think one of the things I'm finding out is this is so complicated for people now. They don't know who to listen to now, because there's so many people that are in this space now, which is a good thing, but we might have to create something, give them the first 12 steps, the first 20 steps, John, to a better life or a better health in this country.
Well, I'm an absolute resource for these type of things, Kevin. They're actually being in process now. I'm blessed to have been born into a situation for such a time as this. And so many of the things you said, almost everything you said, I totally agree with. I'm not a person that thinks Donald Trump is the savior and that we got him elected and now it's all going to be honey and roses and waterfalls. Donald Trump is a real estate developer. And Kevin, if I was going to go to a real estate developer to get my health education or whether I should get a vaccine or not, then I'm pretty crazy. So I respect Donald Trump. I respect what he's good at.
True. Yeah, I do too.
I don't respect what he did with the vaccines or his stance on vaccine, because he doesn't know enough about it. But Kevin, don't come to me about how to make the best wedding cake that's available in the world, because I would do a horrible job. And that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. You come to an expert. And so I'm gonna agree with you 100% that just getting in these people like, all of our problems are solved, we're okay. We have to do it at the grassroots. I have to go out there and work harder than I've ever worked right now before such a time as this. I have to have more bravery to get out and tell the story. And we're going to lose some of us. Yep. Sadly, some of us are going to be lost. And I have friends that have been lost. I have friends that have died because they haven't gotten the information in enough time. I've watched somebody die in 10 days. They could have been helped by everything I'm talking about, but I couldn't get it to them quick enough. So this time that we're in, yes, grassroots is a very important thing. One of the main things I do, Kevin, is try to bring people together. And that's why we formed Operation World Without Cancer. It's because I want to bring all of the God-given modalities. It's not just about what I sell, and I don't have a patent on anything I do. And everything I do you can get on your own. People can grow their own apricot trees or eat the foods that have the Laetron in it. It's about all the God-given answers that have been covered over. So I agree with so much what you said, especially the 2 year, 24 months. I totally got it.
Yeah, and John, you bring up some really, really good points. It's, when you think of the FDA, if you think of the CDC, if you think of the World Health Organization, if you think about all of their partners, that's about $1 trillion. If you think about all of the hedge funds, and think of all of the S&P companies that they control, we got a lot of work to do. We've got to go back to the battlefield and win this, because it's never going to be won politically the way people think it is going to be won politically, unless we lend our voices in a strong way to really create the change that we want. And I really want to caution people about this whole idea that this change is going to happen today. And it's not. And you have to understand, they're going to spend every dollar humanly possible to stop us. But the reason why we won and we're winning now is because we're telling truth to the people of this country, and they're tired of being sick. They're tired of being tired, and they want to be able to free themselves of this industry that believes that they can commoditize our bodies for their profits. And if we run away from that language and start to go in another direction, we're going to lose, because people need to understand that they've been commoditized. People need to understand that the mainstream media, state-run media, has lied to them for decades. People need to understand that there are alternatives out there that have always been out there. Because I remember up until the 1980s, Black Americans were not taking pharmaceutical products the way they are now. They weren't taking it. We didn't see that explosion of obesity until that period of time. So if we were talking about changing key laws, we start there, but we really have to start educating people about what it means to be healthy. And you cannot talk about prosperity or economic prosperity without connecting that to health and a better, healthy society. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents to the great work.
Amen. Amen. Pastor. Amen.
Well, I'm not. Well, the pastors don't think I'm a pastor.
I know. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally.
No. I got you. I got you. No,
Preach, bro. Okay, I should have said preach, brother.
I got you. But I just wanted to send that message out there, because I've been hearing a lot about what the transition team is going to do, and like, guys, you've never been in that building. That's not how that works. This is going to be it's going to be structurally scientific on how you get to where you have to get to. And I think we're ready for that. And I think we all have to put our personalities in our back pocket to understand that politics as we knew it growing up is not politics today.
Nope. It's going to take both ways. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Thanks.
thank you, sir. Drago?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I have some issues with the internet. I can hear you, but I cannot see. The video is not very clear.
I hear you very clearly.
Okay, great. I'm glad. Thank you so much for your presentation, John. It really is. It's a fresh perspective that we obviously don't see in the mainstream media, which is trying to suppress any information about this. To be honest, this is not my field of study. I don't know much about it, but it's fascinating, to hear all your arguments. And I don't have any specific question. I just want to add that the entire industry, the pharmaceutical industry, has always seemed very sketchy to me, because obviously they would always have the interest to maintain the current state. And of course, that's the state of all of us being sick all the time. And of course, the COVID-19 was what broke the ice for me. I was always for the scientific method. I was always interested in what the science has to say about things. But, I stopped believing in that as soon as the COVID hit. At the time, I was working for Fort Worth News, and we tried to debunk a lot of the propaganda. And of course, this was suppressed by the mainstream media. We were essentially proclaimed conspiracy theorists, nuts, and all this. So how do you fight against this? Like, how do you manage to get through all this, mainstream media clutter that they're trying to impose on all of us? We're trying to tell the truth to the people.
Another great question. Love the panel. This is something I've been dealing with my whole life, but it's easier now than it's ever been for people to hear something that before they didn't think was possible, or they didn't believe it, or they didn't, the common answer was, well, if this was really true, John, everybody would know about it. And now people know the most true stuff. Nobody knows about it. We've been lied to about so many things, yet now you have to have discernment, because now you might still be lied to by people that say they're truth tellers. So the way I get around it is I come up with absolute facts. I have absolute studies. I have absolute case histories that anybody that wants to get it can test me and get the information. I'll send it out. We have a research staff that's literally combing through the vault that I'm not sure if you heard me talk about, of all this years of information. And we actually have the actual articles that we can photograph and send to people, or the studies, or the filings with the government, or the books that are written. We have the data to back it up. So anybody that's telling you a story you want to make sure they have the information to back it up. They don't just tell you, oh, I saw something on the internet, or I just saw somebody told me once, or whatever. A lot of the information I get, Drago, is directly from the sources. So when I say I know people, it's not like I'm trying to brag. I know people, but I know people on the transition team. I actually have talked to them, and I've actually met with RK Jr. I was actually on his podcast the day his mom had her stroke. Never got published, and we never will do a podcast because he's probably he's out of the podcasting business. He's got too many important things to do. So I really reserve, anytime someone tells me something, I'll just go, yeah, okay, I hear it, but I don't repeat it until I get secondary backup information. So that's the best thing I can tell you, is the people that I know and trust all have their information is sound, because we get questioned more than mainstream media does. If mainstream media says, we've got spaceships floating outside of New York City, then we believe we have spaceships flying out of New York City. Nobody checks on it. I hear it and it goes in, and I have to get background. If I don't have enough background, I'll tell you, I don't know about that, but I'm looking into it, and I could give you my opinion, but I'm not going to state it as fact. So that's what we have to do on our side, is really have the backup before we go repeating stories, because then we're no different than the other side that just repeats the same mockingbird lies so much that we're programmed to believe their lies. The truth has to be founded in facts.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I also got a lot of flack from the mainstream media for the things I write. So I presume even when you say facts, they will still try to shut you down, or they will try to denigrate you some other ways. They all have these smear campaigns. I mean, they try to kill the president-elect. I don't think any of us is essentially safe in any way. So I'm not surprised by what they're doing. So, I guess all we can do is just to connect with other people who are like-minded and who want to tell people the truth. And I guess that's the most we can do.
Well, absolute great point. I've reached the point now that I love to hear a naysayer. I love to hear an MD, a world-famous neurosurgeon, doctors that about say, I don't know if that, I believe you're right, John. I love to have that discussion with them, and I do it humbly because I've been provided with so much information. But the biggest negative that everybody always says, and everybody will hear it when they repeat it, is that apricot seeds will poison you, that if you eat 3 apricot seeds, you'll die of cyanide poisoning. That is an absolute lie, provable. We don't have a single documented case of it happening. People will get sick to their stomach if they eat too many. But as I finish this statement, I'm going to go ahead and eat 10 so that the audience knows that you can do it. I tell people start with 1 and build up. And I'm happy to answer the question, if anybody has it, about how the science works behind why it's so good to take amygdalin in your foods.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, if you would want to, I would be happy to hear the science behind it. Not just because of myself, but also because of everyone else who might be listening.
John, I've been taking the apricots after I met you. That's when I've been taking them since then. I've been on.
That Kevin, that makes me happy, because if I can wake up in the morning and one person hears this story that says, wait a minute, John, a guy, Ed Griffin, who's 93, who's been eating apricot seeds since the 70s, and he doesn't know anybody that's died of cancer that regularly eats apricot seeds. Now, if you think I'm lying, you can ask Ed yourself. He's been quoted as saying that many times. But I don't know anybody either that regularly eats apricot seeds that's ever died of cancer. So here's the science in a very quick nutshell. Amygdalin is found in 1,200 different foods. It contains 4 compounds, 2 of glucose, 1 of cyanide, and 1 of benzaldehyde. Cyanide and benzaldehyde separately are very poisonous. Together, they're 10 times more poisonous. So what crazy person would eat 20 seeds or 10 seeds right in front of you containing these poisonous compounds? They're locked tightly in the molecule of amygdalin, so tightly you can compare it to table salt, sodium chloride. If you had chlorine by itself, chlorine gas, you'd die right immediately. they couldn't even in the 70s break apart the molecule of amygdalin in the lab without destroying the molecule completely. So God created an enzyme called beta glucosidase. It's also known as the unlocking enzyme. And amygdalin floats along, never being tightly locked until it comes in contact with the enzyme beta glucosidase, which breaks it apart into those 4 molecules. That's great news, but also might scare you. Wait a minute, John, if it's in my body, I'm going to get cyanide poisoning. The only place that beta glucosidase is found at appreciable amounts, up to 100, even 1,000 times more prevalent, is in a improperly multiplying cell, a C cell. This is fact. This is not conjecture. This is fact. That when the FDA in the 70s was studying it, when they finally got the beta glucosidase in the lab, they could break it apart. And that's how they said, oh, there's possible a cyanide poisoning. It's in a human body, it's only found primarily in a C cell floating around in your body, ready to attach itself and metastasize. Now, that would also be scary if I was eating tons of apricot seeds and I had a lot of C in my body, that I could break apart all this stuff. But we have this other enzyme called rhodinase. And rhodinase is not found in C cells, but it's found in healthy cells appreciably. There's a little bit of rhodinase in C cells. There's a little bit of beta glucosidase in healthy cells. But the appreciable amounts of rhodinase break down the cyanide and benzaldehyde into analgesics. So that's why sometimes you'll eat apricot seeds and have a numbing feeling in your mouth. You're not being poisoned. You're having an analgesic effect. And my father said, and Loyola University, and all these studies that we have all said 95% of the C patients had pain relief. They would literally get off of these poisonous pharmaceutical drugs because of the pain relief they got from the analgesic effect of rhodinase. Those compounds are just broken down and they are peed out or defecated out naturally. And that's the science. That's the basic science. Now, it gets more complicated than I just did. We can do a master class on all of the science and all of the working, but that's the basic. So in a nutshell, it's a chemotherapeutic agent from God that kills the cancer cell, but helps the healthy cells and has no appreciable side effects other than an upset stomach or lowering of blood pressure, naturally lowering your blood pressure. So if you're on a blood pressure medication from Big Pharma, you want to be careful of your intake of apricot seeds. But we don't have any cases of anybody dying of cyanide poisoning, even though that's a common thread you'll see everywhere. But if you go to YouTube, watch a video about the demonization of how you'll die of apricot seeds, you'll see 1,600 positive comments about all the people that are talking about the benefits they've received. So the truth is breaking through. And so that's my little science lesson in about 3 minutes.
I just covered quick one there, Grace, sorry. Because you mentioned the chemo. And I mean, unfortunately, not just me, but I presume everybody here, we know somebody that went through it and they don't last long after it, or else they get an operation, they cut out something. And I always ask them, did the doctor ask you what you're eating and everything? Never. So with your experience, like we all know people that, because there's so many people now of cancer, and we will always give the advice, I mean, I didn't know about the apricot before today, but I would say noni juice, the Spooky 2, which is the Royal Raymond Drive machine.
Mm-hmm.
But for those that are skeptical, what's the conversation that you would recommend that we try to get them instead of taking the chemo route?
Well, it depends on their skepticism and where it comes from and what we have to overcome. There's people in my life that I've told about this. They just think I'm a liar. They think I'm doing it for some who knows what reason. I'm a tinfoil hat believer, but it's so much easier now because they're willing to accept it. So it depends on, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink is one thing I would say. But here's a fact that's well proven. Chemotherapeutic drugs, only 6% ever makes it to the deadly cancer cells. 94% makes it to all your healthy cells. So would you choose first to go for that route, even if you think it's going to work, or would you choose first to go a natural route that's been proven to 99% goes to the the cancer cells, and only 1% goes to the healthy cells, or less than 1%. There's not even really any situation where it does. And well, you could have just made those statistics up, John. Well, then you've got to do the research. If you're just blind eye, many people that we talk to, Roy, don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They would go, no, I don't want to hear it. They're just so brainwashed that they're unhelpable. And so, unfortunately, until it becomes mainstream, until I can get on every podcast, until I can teach you guys everything that I know that you can pass it along, it's not going to become common knowledge. But for such a time as this, because the world is more open to this now than they've ever been, I would think that all of you, after hearing this, would at least want to know more, want to say, don't trust John Richardson, because I could just be wanting to sell a $35 bag of apricot seeds that lasts 5 months so I can try to get rich off that. Or you could think he's trying to change the world. And I hope you choose the side of that, because you don't even need me. If I'm successful, I'll put myself out of business, because everybody will know to eat apricot seeds and B17 on their own in their own diet, and they won't need me. So that's truly, I can say that. That's the goal. Tell everybody about this so it's as easy to get as vitamin C. We wipe out the C word and the world becomes a better place.
Beautiful. All right. I pass back to Grace. Thank you.
So, John, would you paint a picture on the success when it happens? And see, I didn't say if it happens. When it happens that the pharma advertising and propaganda will be dismantled, paint us a picture of how our world will be healthier.
Well, I'll first start off by there is a precedence, and many people don't know about it, but there's a precedence with cigarette smoking and tobacco companies. They demonized nicotine. I talked about it before. And so there's positives and negatives about the demonization, and we won't get into that. But it's worked before that they were able to pass a rule that you couldn't advertise it. So it's an easy rule to pass. The FCC is already in function. They already control how many cuss words we can say on live television, all the rest of the stuff, so they can easily put it into effect. But when they put it into effect, we will stop having the pressure from the unknowing public who doesn't learn anything about natural stuff, the pressure that they give, that they want to be running in the fields of, and fishing with their kids on the stream and hitting baseballs cleanly. That's the life I want to live. So I'm going to go to my doctor and say, give me that thing that I've watched is going to make my life so wonderful. All that programming and that pressure that we have that makes people, like Roy said, not want to listen to natural answers, which we don't have the budget to make you run by the screen to tell people about. Everything that we talk about is self-financed, and you have to get it at the grocery store. So it's going to change the pressure, the brainwashing and the pressure from the public going to the doctors to want these drugs that they don't need. And it's going to change it so that doctors have to learn about these drugs instead of being asked to sell them. They're going to have to learn about them so they can. It's going to put the pressure back on the doctor to get an education about what these things do, because most of them don't know. They just wait for the patient to ask for it, and they give it to them. That's the system. So it's going to completely change when we take the $1 trillion out of the budget, and where the news, by the way, is affected by this investment. It's going to change that so that we can trust again our news media to give us the truth about natural answers, that without the pressure of the millions of dollars they'll lose by telling people don't take this pharmaceutical because it's bad for you and this natural answer is better for you. They can trust their news again. It's going to make a sweeping change, more like, I can disagree with a lot of laws in foreign countries, but one of the things, food in Europe is better for you than it is in the United States. Drugs aren't pushed you have to get it through the doctors in foreign countries. That's the system that's going to change. And RFK Jr. promised me, I'm not going to, like Kevin said, I'm not going to just trust he's going to do it. I'm going to follow up. Promised me that within 2 years, he was going to bring our standard, our food standards and our advertising ability within 2 years to what it is elsewhere in the world. And that's going to change us dramatically.
Yeah, I wanted to say, and I'm very proud of Bobby for doing what he's doing. continuing to be the sacrificial lamb for the truth, like we all have been. And I'm very hopeful that we can accomplish all of those things. But as I've said earlier, I think we help him when we organize and institutionalize our voices at the state and local level. Because they're still passing laws at the state and local level that's directly opposed to what we're trying to do and making the world healthier again and making our country healthier again and protecting, our children. So I think the only way he can be effective if we're effective and continuing to educate our nation and our communities about, we're on the wrong track on our health and we got to get better. So I just want to leave it with that.
I totally agree with you, Kevin. I completely agree with you. And I'm inspired. I have a smile on my face because I do have inside information. There's a lot of misdirection going on. I will tell you that. And I'm not one of those people at all that goes, oh, we're saved. Oh gosh, everything's wonderful. But there's a lot of misdirection that making people look here when other great stuff is going on. So I can testify to that. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy. We haven't won by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm very happy that things are finally changing in our favor. In our favor. So
that's right. I'm excited about it too, man. It's great.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you, everyone. And as we all know, just like also in politics, just like in health, so one little thing is just a success or winning a battle, but not the whole war, okay? As long as you're breathing, as long as you wake up in the morning, you always have that chance. So now it's your turn. When I say it's your turn, our audience, your turn to do the work that you need to do to change the course of your life and your health, especially for you and your family. So make sure you subscribe. And John again can invite us to the nonprofit organization, Operation World Without Cancer.com, and also to rncstore.com. And he graciously offered a 10% discount for any of you to check out by using the word Grace or my name Grace. Okay. So, and that will also help the podcast going. And anything more that you want to share, John?
Yeah, we're just building a secondary economy as well. I recommend people spend money with those that care about you and love you and want you to be healthy and kind of avoid the system that wants us dead and all the rest. So using the discount code GRACE is a wonderful way to save money, but also to help support those that tell the truth. And that's also our mission.
Right.
So be well, everyone, and thanks again. And we always welcome you, John, in the near future, and I'm sure we'll cross its path again.
God bless everybody. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful Christmas. Merry Christmas.
So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you can find my 6 podcasts on roycollin.com or scan the QR code if you're looking to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour. I help with that. Also, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we also have that service. And you can help the show by visiting the store, supporting our sponsors, or making a donation. Until next week, take care.